2020 remote electronic meeting in behalf of the Troy Downtown Development Authority to order. With that, Glenn, can we do a roll call, please?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I can. Chair Alan Kurlick.
Here.
Vice Chair Tim Blair.
Here.
Mayor Ethan Baker.
Here.
Cheryl Bush.
Here.
Larry Kiesling.
Here.
Marty Nolenberg.
Here. Here.
Dan McLeish. Dan McLeish.
He's here. He just needs to get unmuted. It's the microphone, Dan. You can press the microphone. There you go.
Is that okay?
There you go. Yep, you're good.
Right.
Thanks, Dan.
Sorry about that.
Brian Majewski. Brian Majewski. I don't believe he's on. Ward Randall.
Here.
Thank you. Ernie Reschke. Ernie? I know he's there. He's just muted. We'll take that as he's here. Kenny Koza.
Here.
Thank you. Doug Schroeder.
Here.
Thank you. Tara Tomsic-Husak.
Here.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, we have a quorum.
Okay, thank you so much. With that, item number 3, the resolution to conduct electronic meeting. Is that required to be in action?
Yeah, yes, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the opportunity to just explain a little bit. Previously, you have you've passed a resolution allowing for virtual meetings or electronic meetings. However, that was based on the executive order of the governor. And since that time, there have been some changes, as you may have heard about. But now there is a new law that does allow for virtual meetings to occur until at least the end of the year. But you have to specify a reason. So I do recommend that you do pass this that actually references the public act that has been passed. It's Public Act 228 of 2020. And I do have the resolution, Mr. Chair, if you would like me to read it, or I think it was sent to all of you as well.
If everybody's okay, I think we have all received it and we should be in order. If there are no discussions at the moment, I would like to entertain a motion to approve.
So moved. So moved, Ward Randall.
Do we have a second?
Second. Dan, please. Blair.
Okay. Any further discussion? Those in favor, aye?
Aye. Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Okay, done. Thank you.
So, Mr. Chair, and I'm sorry to do this, but it's one of the things that is recommended is that you do a voice vote for every vote. And so Mr. Lapin, I'm sure, is ready to call the roll. And I know it's going to be a little cumbersome, but that is one of the requirements for a virtual meeting.
Okay. Got it. No problem.
Chair Alan Curley.
Yes.
Vice Chair Tim Blair.
Yes.
Mayor Baker.
Yes.
Cheryl Bush.
Yes.
Larry Kiesling.
Yes.
Marty Nolenberg.
Yes.
Thank you. Dan McLeish.
Yes.
Brian Majewski, I don't believe is on the line. Ward Randall.
Yes.
Ernie Reschke.
Yes.
Kenny Koza.
Yes.
Doug Schroeder.
Yes.
Tara Tomsic-Husak.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
Motion passes.
Thank you so much. All right. By the way, welcome, Mayor, for joining us. Thank you. Nice to see you. The matter of approval of our June 11th minutes. Do we have any corrections, clarifications? If not, I would entertain a motion to approve.
So moved, Dan McLeish.
Second?
Second, Ward Randall.
Okay, thank you. Any discussions? If you would, Glenn, do the voice call, roll call.
Chair Alan Curley,
Yes?
Tim Blair,
Yes.
Mayor Baker,
Yes, sorry.
Cheryl Bush,
Abstain.
Larry Kiesling,
Yes.
Marty Nolenberg,
Yes.
Dan McLeish,
Yes.
Brian Majewski is not on the line, I believe. Ward Randall,
I'm here.
Yes.
Actually, Mr. Majewski is here now.
okay. Ward Randall, Ernest Reschke,
Yes.
Tara Thompson-Cusack,
Yes.
Kenny Koza,
Yes.
Doug Schroeder.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, thank you. We have no old business, and we're going to move on to new business. And the first item is introduction of our very qualified and wonderful new members. And Mark Miller, will you present them to us, please?
Yes, thank you, Alan. And first of all, I want to thank everybody for utilizing this cumbersome process, but we need to continue. Now, I personally, you may not know that, my son lives in Marquette. I'm in Marquette right now, and he's all over the place because he's a field scientist, and he's just as finishing up a quarantine from COVID today, and he's driving up, and he's actually going to check a site in Atlanta, Michigan, other place. But everything is good, it's safe, but at least this remote meetings allows us to deal with this weird situation we're all in and try to do business as much as possible. With that being said, the mayor appointed and city council, the mayor nominated and city council confirmed that. Cheryl Bush and Tara Thompson-Cusack, I want to thank them for committing themselves for our Downtown Development Authority. It is a very important part of our city. This is a very important board that kind of is the center of the city in the sense that it's the financial engine. And thank you very much. And Chair, if you would like, I can continue to the next agenda item B, which is the I-75 update.
Yes,
So,
please.
yes, we have, for the I-75 update, like everyone knows, it's under construction. We have Bill Hootery here, our city engineer, and Drew Bucker from MDOT. So I'm going to first turn it over to Bill Hootery, and then he can hand it over to Drew. Thank you.
Thank you. Drew is the project manager from MDOT, and he has another meeting at 10:30. So I'm just going to turn it over right to him, and he can provide a construction update.
Good morning, everybody. Thanks for inviting me to the meeting. I'll try to give you a brief update of what's going on. You've probably observed driving up and down the freeway. We are progressing at a pretty good rate right now. Our goal being to open all 3 lanes, open 3 lanes, that is, not all of the lanes, but to open 3 lanes in both directions by November the 15th. That's the goal. The HOV lane will be hashed out and will remain that way until the end of 2023, when that segment 3 project to the south is completed. So even though it's all constructed and everything, the HOV lane will remain hashed out. Right now, by the 15th, the contractor's also saying that they should have all of the local road work done as well. That means Big Beaver Road, 14-Mile Road, and the DDIs are scheduled to be completed and opened. Right now, we are experiencing some difficulties at 14 Mile. They're a little bit behind over there. We've run into some utility problems on 14 Mile Road. We were trying to work through that, but the contractor is still optimistic that we can get that paved out. So we have to keep our eye on that. The job itself won't be complete until next year. There have been delays. There is a noise wall that has to be constructed next year. On the northbound side, north of Waddles, it's called wall number 10. It's an absorptive wall. We have two of those type of walls on the project that apparently they absorb sound. There's one on the southbound side, wall 7, and there's wall 10 on the northbound side. Because of the COVID pandemic, the manufacturer was delayed in being able to manufacture the panels and things like that. So the posts are going in now. You'll probably see the posts are going in, but the panels will not be, the fabrication won't be complete till next year. So contractor is projecting probably around April of next year to be basically done with this project in its entirety. Right now we are working on a landscape project to, similar to the one that was done between, I think, probably South Boulevard and Coolidge. We're going to do one from Coolidge to 13. It's a CMGC type of contract delivery, where we have the consultant and we have the general contractor on board. We're getting the general contractor on board to help with the design. We probably won't start planting on that project until next fall because of the fact that the freeway job itself won't be done until next April. We probably won't be able to take advantage of the spring planting season. So we're working on that. And I know the city has been recently been involved in our project planning meetings, and we're going to gap out those areas of the landscape while they work on some plan, work on you guys' plans. So that's pretty much the high level of what's going on. Contractor is telling us that all of the local road work should be done by the 15th. So we're keeping an eye on that. And if there are any questions at all, or that I may be able to answer, or I may be able to go back and get some answers.
Any questions? I have one, Drew. And when you refer to the HO and being hashed out, it's not going to be blocked out, but it's just going to be pavement marked, and that means we're supposed to stay out of that lane?
It'll just be pavement marked, meaning it'll be hashed out, meaning you just stay out. There won't be any physical barrier or anything like that.
And so you're going to keep everybody off that lane for the time
We're going to
being?
keep them out until 2023 when the project to the south is all done.
Okay. Any questions? Anybody else? Well, thanks for coming in, Drew. We appreciate it. Appreciate the update, and I suspect that it's been a struggle, this job.
It has.
Yeah.
Coming in late in the game, I mean, the job was more than halfway done when I came on board. About 75% done when I came. Really May. So it has been a struggle catching up and and it's a different project delivery than I'm accustomed to, being a design build type of a project. This is our normal design bid build. So it's different when plan is being designed on the fly. In fact, still being designed, amazingly, it's still being designed as we go here. So it's different. So
we certainly appreciate everything the MDOT crew's been doing, and I'm sure the contractor's been doing their best. And at any rate, so we're looking forward to everything being flowing and open for traffic. So thank you so much. Thank you to the rest of the crew at MDOT.
Okay, you're welcome. Thank you very much.
Questions? I guess we can let, go ahead. Did you?
Chairman? Yeah,
Yes.
my question is more for Bill Hootery, our city engineer. We can let Drew go.
Okay. All right. Take care, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Drew.
Thank you.
So the I-75 obviously was a major impact on our community, and we had to draw back and really reduce the work that we did on our roads. And I'm Bill on a little question here, but Bill, talk just a little bit how in our capital planning process, we had to really stop working on roads to let the I-75 be constructed and talk about where we're going to go from here. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah, because originally when MDOT proposed this project, it was going to be spread out over about 30 years. They were going to do segments every 2 years. They were going to kind of hop skip through the project from the north end all the way down to the south end. And it was going to be done in over about 30 years. And then they fast forward to what we see now. So it required that we modify our 5-year capital plan. And essentially what we did is we moved as many of the major road projects out to 21 as possible to try and lessen the impact for motorists, knowing that there was going to be a lot of impact from the I-75 project. So what you'll see coming up in 21 and beyond is a resumption of projects on our major roads. And probably the single largest one is one we're working on with the Road Commission for Oakland County to do about $9 million worth of concrete pavement replacement on various county roads from Big Beaver to Livernois to Long Lake to DeQuinder and some others. That's going out for bid this winter through MDOT, and construction starting probably in the spring. So it's a very large project. Majority of the money is coming from unused federal dollars that were returned to the county, and the county called us up and asked if we would like to participate in a project. So we did. Our share is just under $1 million on about a $9 million contractor payment and about an $11 million total project. So that will be coming up. And then we've got some other overlay type projects, those types of things to pick up some of the areas that have we've had to push off for a couple of years, but starting back in 21 and then for the next couple of years, you'll see some work in and around the I-75 area, as well as some of the other majors that were pushed off.
Bill, are you getting that money from the county and the feds as a result of your match capability?
To a certain degree, but some of it is unused earmarks. Some of it is funds that were years ago, projects like Big Beaver and I think John R., they used economic development category C funds. So there was some extra category C funds that are coming back, and it has to be used on those specific roads. So it's a combination of our ability to match and the money that the cities put forward to fix county roads back in 2014 and 2015. So the county is coming back to us saying, hey, you helped us previously. We would like to help the city and kind of make us whole from the investment that the city made back in 14 and 15.
Yeah, I'd like to put a little compliment in here for the City of Troy staff and the mayor and the city council for our board members here. In that, it just kind of remind you that having a disciplined city when fiscally has put us in a position where the city of Troy can match. And these federal dollars require a match, and most of you are probably aware of that. But many communities in Oakland County as well, but they don't have the ability to come up with their match funds. And when they can't come up with their match funds, they lose the funds for the road improvements. And therefore, the city gets ahead of a lot of communities because of the administrative and council and mayor's disciplines about the fiscal operation of the city. And nobody realizes that, or you don't hear about it, but it's a very significant factor here for our roads. I have one other question. Bill, can you touch on any data as to the safety factor or the capacity? We don't want to get into a rabbit hole. We have a lot to cover, but I'm talking about is I-75. Can you do you have off the cuff the data in terms of the current accidents, et cetera, and versus what you expect now with the new highway, so we can kind of get a measure of the safety factor and even the car capacity factor, if you can.
To be honest, no, other than crashes in general have been down, and primarily due to the pandemic. Volumes have decreased. They're starting to tick back up now. once this section of I-75 is open. The DDI at 14 and Big Beaver themselves, it's anticipated that traffic will move better onto and off of I-75. Capacity on Big Beaver, obviously you're constrained by what's east and west of the DDI at both locations. So depending on how traffic builds back up in both areas, yet to be seen. Lots of new developments being proposed on Big Beaver are going to add traffic. So I don't really have any good numbers right now. MDOT went through a whole traffic simulation when they were looking at the DDIs because that was a change. That was reviewed by our traffic consultant, OHM Advisors, as well as the Road Commission, because Big Beaver is a county road, and both were satisfied with the data that was presented with some tweaks that were incorporated into the design build. So it's more a wait and see at this point to see where we go.
Okay, Mark, you had a comment?
Nope.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
I was adjusting my lighting.
Does everybody have a question in regards to 75? Okay. Well, thank you, Bill, Mark, and team. So with that, we're going to move on to item C, and that's the 2009 project information. So this will be historical, and with the linkage as to where do we go from here, and I'm sure Bill, Mark, and Bill will be informing you in terms of the landscape, the status that we're going to be dealing with MDOT, and then where do we go, or what do we want to do from here in terms of our influence, our investment, and our objectives. So with that, Bill and Mark, I think we'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, here, I'll start and then I'll turn it over to Bill. So this subject actually includes a couple items on our agenda. So right now we're talking about item C under new business, which is the 2009 I-75 Big Beaver interchange and gateway plans. So for those of you who don't know it, Alan Kurlick has been on the DDA since the 90s, and he has been chairman, and so he asked that we bring forth the plans from 2009, which were actually out to bid, which were very significant. The estimated cost were approximately $4 million, included many trees and some landmark treatments such as pinnacles and inserts in the bridge or viaduct areas. The crash happened, and the property values in the city and primarily the DDA dropped dramatically. So therefore, the DDA had a significant decrease in revenues. And there's another story about bonds that need to be paid. We won't go into that, but we'll talk a little bit later in the meeting. No, well, maybe I should mention that the city had to come forth with the full faith and credit of the city and and then utilize the AAA bond ratings and refinance the bonds, because the DDA on its own no longer could pay for those bonds. And we also did some amendments to the what's called the DDA plan, and specifically the TIF plan, and we were able to eliminate some properties from that TIF plan in weird lots that actually increased our revenues. So long story short, we have averted and we are paying off our bonds. But the problem was back in 2009, we had this big project that had to be stopped in its tracks, and then it was shelved. So Chairman Kurlick, I've kept him aware of all this, and he wanted the plans to be included in our in our documentation, in our agenda, so that you can take a look at it. It's rather significant. And the second portion of those plans, I actually have colored drawings and renderings that show the landmark pinnacles and things of that. So part of the reason we're bringing this forward is for historical context, but also to sort of stimulate your minds of where are we going to go now, because and we'll talk about the next agenda item, how we have some additional funding becoming available to the Downtown Development Authority. At this point, I want to kind of turn it over to Bill. Bill, if you have any comments that you want to talk about that plan, because Bill's been with the city for a time. He was the deputy city engineer when these were designed and let for bid. Bill, do you have any more comments you want to add?
I guess not really on that plan, because that was when we had the old Cloverleaf interchange and the CD roads, and what's going to be out there and what's partially built or almost completely built now is the DDI. So it's a much different configuration, a much different layout. The MDOT landscape phase, we did, Mark and myself and Kurt Bovenseep had met with MDOT and their architect engineer Rowe last week. They're at about 30% base plan level right now with design, and our discussion with them was potentially gapping out the Big Beaver area to work with the DDA to come up with a landscape phase or landscape project, because we felt that what the DDA may desire would be beyond what normal MDOT landscape, highway landscaping would be. They're looking at about a $3.5 million landscape project from Coolidge down to 13 Mile, and they are working to get final plan specs and estimates by March 12th for an MDOT bid letting of May the 7th, and then they would start their plantings in October of 21. So sounds like there's a long time, but starting from scratch essentially here, moving to final plans by March 12th is a pretty ambitious schedule. So we need to look at whether we try and use one of our consultants that we have understaffed that have landscape abilities, or if we kind of utilize Rowe as MDOT's architect and essentially give them a scope of services for additional work within the DDA, which would be paid for by the DDA, and then essentially enhance the landscaping in the DDI area along Big Beaver as part of MDOT's landscape project. There are some benefits to that, in that they would have all the contract documents prepared, and essentially what we would be doing is utilizing their consultant to design the landscaping or the enhanced landscaping in the Big Beaver corridor. So we still have some questions because there are some federal regulations that MDOT is under that they need to get back to us on. We are to talk with them again, I believe, tomorrow to just discuss this more and what potential we have. And I guess so this is kind of a coming to DDA to see what it is that you guys want, knowing that typical highway landscaping is probably not what you're looking for in the DDI and in the Big Beaver corridor. So I don't know if Kurt's got something Kurt can add to that if he's got some more.
Yeah, Kurt,
Yeah.
This is Mark. Just really quick, Kurt, kind of talk about the direction you want to go, in the sense that Kurt, the DDA puts funds aside for maintenance, and Kurt and his staff is responsible for the landscaping all along Big Beaver. And Kurt, you have some maintenance and practical and design issues you need to accomplish long term, which definitely has a relationship to this intersection. Go ahead, Kurt.
Thanks, Mark. Just a point of quick clarification so everyone's on the same page. MDOT is not proposing any landscape improvements inside the median of Big Beaver. So in the actual DDI, their landscape plans only include the interchange. So when we talk about our relationship with MDOT, we're only talking really about the interchanges themselves, not the median islands in the DDA. That would be something completely separate and would not involve MDOT. So in regards to the rest of or current landscaping throughout the DDA, as most of you probably remember, we used to have extensive plantings in the DDA, which included annual flowers, extensive irrigation. Since then, we've changed the ordinance for irrigation. We've eliminated annual flowers. We've tried to replace those with perennials like the low grow walkers. Most of the landscape is very tired. The original design was to create that corridor feel, so you can't see the north and south side of Big Beaver when you're traveling east and west. It's been my experience through discussing with many of you members that's not something that's very practical anymore, that you actually want the visibility from both east and westbound Big Beaver. So this really creates an opportunity to redesign the landscaping and give it a new, refreshed feel, which may or may not include annual plantings or better served as maybe just turf, or consider our design in total when we talk about that DDI median, because it should complement what our future plans are along the DDA median.
Thank you, Kurt. So Chair, that is our presentation related to the 2009 plans. I don't know if you have any comments on that, but I'm prepared to go on to new business item D if you want to move on.
Yeah, okay. So everybody has in their package the 2009 concepts documents. Is that right? You know, Mark? Or?
Yes, that is correct. It's in the agenda.
Yeah. Okay. So to begin with, when I hear that somebody's got a mic open and they're moving papers, so that would be great for the team, for everybody, if they can mic it. I'll mute it. But so I was really taken back when I heard that MDOT's going to spend just $3 million in landscaping from Coolidge down to 13 Mile Road. And that is in my view, that's a paltry amount of money. And I'm sure, like everybody on this call, when you travel around the country, in one area certainly, like Florida, I mean, they really get into their landscaping and their interchanges and the environment. And so when we're approaching, so the amount of money we're getting is almost like some stick trees and some seed mulch, right? I mean, that's about what the program is. Is that right, Kurt? And Bill? So when we started this in 2009, the board, which was completely supportive of it, the vision was that they were trying to create an arrival, a sense of arrival, and more of an environment, more of a place out of the big corridor. So consequently, we engaged a renowned architect, Randy Metz, Grissom Metz firm, the DDA did, and went about coming up with some sort of a plan. And then, of course, that was put off as Mark had indicated. But we were trying to create a special place, an identifiable place, and something to make people feel, like they've arrived. And the thought was it was going to be beneficial for the city of Troy, the Troy residents, and the corridor, the DDA area responsibilities. So the plan was developed and was moving along at that point. So we're now confronted with what I consider a serious challenge, and that is, what do we do about the interchange? Are we going to let it just have some sticks? What I'm referring to is some randomly placed deciduous 1.5 or 2 inch trees. And you can see what they did with the section from Coolidge North, give you an idea of what they deliver. And so do we want Troy to look like that? Do we want the Big Beaver corridor? The thought is that while we have a chance, they haven't spent their money, whatever they would be allocating to the, and I assume what you were talking about, Bill, is the DDI, is the Big Beaver interchange, correct? Is that right, Bill?
Yes, that's correct.
DDI. So the DDI, we've tried to identify how much money is MDOT putting on the table, prepared to put on the table, and how would we want to supplement it, and what do we want to achieve? So this is, in my view, an important factor, and hopefully, we're not saying that the drawings that you have are what we have to do at all, but we should address it and see what we can do. And I think maybe Mark will give a little more specifics if he can today in terms of what kind of money the DDA would have available that we could be thinking of. In other words, if we had a budget of dollars, and then with that coupled with MDOT's money, if everybody feels they want to do something. Now, one thing that was on the plan I'd like to have you pay close attention to is the spires. You'll see a vertical structure with a needle, a stainless steel needle, and there were envisioned to be 4 of them at the intersection. And what they were stainless steel, and they go to a needle and point, and they were going to be uplit. So we begin to develop a marketing and imaging and branding for the corridor, and frankly, Troy, perhaps, if everybody agrees with that thought, that we would have what would be a kind of a branding impact. And you can think of it in a cloudy day and there's a haze or whatever, and this will be going up into the sky. I mean, this is it's got a lot of impact, and it works day and night. And there was a lot of enthusiasm for it. And I would say, and then we'll be talking about marketing, but we also are now challenged because City of Detroit, and no disrespect to them, but they are marketing well. They have a lot going on, and every time something new happens, you hear about it on the public relations aspect. They have a new vision. Well, there are a lot of people that are suffering, not only restaurants, but their office buildings and what have you. The corridor that needs to have more attention, that it's a place, I think, where people want to be, maybe spend their work day, work, live, and play, right? And so I think this presentation of how we come across and how we establish and set ourselves up from a branding standpoint is a very important matter. And I think that today, when Mark will give some details here, but I think today maybe we just kind of give a reading how people feel. Do you want to ignore it and leave it, let them do what they do? Or do we want to pay attention and upgrade and enhance it as to whatever our strategy, short-term, long-term is? So with that, I think, Mark, maybe can you give that some detail? You have that? Can you do that?
Yes, Chairman. So what I'd like to do is move the talk about dollars and cents to the next agenda item D, and more talk generally about MDOT and the process. So as what was stated earlier, Public Works Director Kurt Bovenseep and City Engineer Bill Hootery and I met with MDOT and Rowe, their consultant doing the design work for the landscaping for I-75. So what's happening right now is, one, MDOT has not committed to blocking out that intersection and giving the DDA a credit of money. They have not committed to that. In fact, they, correct me if I'm wrong, Bill and Kurt, they actually were very kind of negative against that, kind of implied that wouldn't happen. So where we're at now is that MDOT and their consultant are in the process of preparing their typical standard landscaping. They want to let it out, in other words, bid it, do a procurement process in the spring for a fall planting. At least that's what they indicated to us. We, the DDA and staff, we're given a circumstance where if we want to, we potentially could work with But any plans or proposals that we would want would have to be fully designed and permitted by March. And I won't get into the exact dates. And so that presents a little bit of a challenge from speed and time, since we don't even know what we want to do yet. We and I are going to get back with MDOT and find out what's happening, but we could potentially what are called dollars for extras and work with Rowe and design it. Or we could hire our own landscape architecture firm that is pre-approved by MDOT and do design work that then needs to be permitted and put into the plan. Now, when I say that, that sounds a lot easier because there's a permitting process. Or we could take more time and do something in the future. So what we would like to get from the DDA is a little bit of direction, but I want to wait to talk about that a little bit when we get to item D, because in item D, we'll start talking about additional revenues that the DDA potentially will have due to a repayment, and I'll go into that when we talk about the next item. And Bill, anything to add about MDOT's process that I missed?
No, I think you hit the high points. I mean, really, it becomes an issue of because the landscape phase is federally funded, so trying to do credits and that kind of stuff is difficult, if not impossible. So that's why we talked about gapping out, or even potentially they could come through, do what they're required, because they've got some requirements as part of the project, and that was one of the things MDOT was supposed to be checking on, is some environmental clearance requirements and what, if anything, they had to have planted by a certain time. So it may be that we have MDOT do their basic plantings in and around the interchange, and then we come through later and do a enhanced landscaping project under an MDOT permit. That's a possibility as well. So lots of discussion points still to happen. We still need to talk to MDOT again to find out what information they may have, and then get some direction from the DDA as well.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Do we have any idea at all what they are planning on doing, or have they given us any outline or anything of what they are planning on doing? Just to see what their, the parameters are that they have.
I don't know. Bill or Mark?
No, not at this point. What they have is just base plans, which essentially is just showing the project limits, and they've highlighted areas where their plantings would go. So, I mean, they're still working on species and types and location. In total, they were talking about 2,500 trees. So there'd probably be some bushes, but the entire corridor.
The entire corridor. That's from Coolidge to 13 Mile Road. They put just for a little bit of background or context, I know that in my context with MDOT, they were really proud of what they did at Square Lake Road in I-75. And if you look at it carefully, it's a lot of trees. I don't know what species, but it just looks like, deciduous of some type. And some evergreens, a few. But it's just rows of trees. So, you can't expect a lot coming out of there. Because that whole thought, that's not a culture of theirs, is to even landscape or an upgrade right away in the evergreen on environmental side, in my opinion. But maybe after we get through the item E, and we talked about Somerset, we talked about the marketing, and then we'll come back to this issue. Would that be okay with everybody?
Yeah, I think so, from my standpoint.
All right. Everybody else? Okay. Dan?
Yep.
Then we'll get into it, right? All right, then, Mark and Lori and Rob, you folks are going to give us a little download on the Somerset Collection parking deck payment, right?
Yes, but Chairman, was Tara Tomsic, were you raising your hand?
Oh,
No, okay, I thought the issue was.
okay. All right. Sorry.
All right, so in my presentation, I'm going to turn this over to Lori Bloom, the city attorney and advisor to the DDA, and Rob Melzek, our Chief Financial Officer and also financial advisor to the DDA. So a lot of people don't realize that back in the early 90s, when the DDA was created, it provided for the funding and construction of Somerset Collection North parking lot. And the fact is that in that deal, the Forbes companies provided a $4 million, just over $4 million, actually $4,035,171 to the DDA, which was deposited in August. And so I personally have been giving a lot of thought what to do with the funds as they come in. And so with that, when you consider that back in 2012-13, when the DDA plan was amended and the DDA bonds were then what I'll call refunded with the backing of the city, and that plan has worked well and we've gone along. But with this, so therefore, the city has really backed what the DDA is doing. But however, the TIF from the DDA is first pledged to service those bonds. So when you have these new funds come in and they're deposited, my idea in my discussions with the Chief Financial Officer, and he can talk a little bit more, Rob, was that we wanted to protect the city's interests, since the full faith and credit of the city, it backs those bonds, by reducing the principal. And so then there were some technical reasons, which Lori Bloom will get into. There were taxable and non-taxable bonds, and there were certain limitations and implications, especially related to the taxable bonds, meaning that those funds needed to be expended on capital expenditures. So my idea, my thought, and my strategy, and not just mine, but both Lori Bloom and Rob Melzak agree with it, that if we reduce the principal, we would reduce the risk of the city, which is a good thing. And then when we did that, there were certain implications which would then, if we applied approximately $3 million to write down the debt and then refinance it, still utilizing the city's AAA bond rating, we would be able to actually reduce the payments that are necessary and take advantage of better interest rates, which actually then increases the yearly revenue of which Rob will go into a little more detail. But what the important point is that we can do this refinancing without amending the plan. However, if we have any additional funds, and let's say for this landscaping, we will have to amend the DDA's plan, which takes some time. This strategy would also allow for a deposit of, let's say, it's under $1 million. I think it's about $750,000 into the reserve of the DDA. I think I've hit all the high points that I wanted to talk about, and I wanted to turn it over to Lori because there are actually some very legal and technical issues related to the bonds that would be paid off. Thank you.
So, Mr. Chair, I can follow up, and Mark, you've actually covered most of the things that are in the memo that I had sent to the DDA members. But it's already, the City Council has already authorized a refunding, and thanks to Rob and also Mark for looking out for great opportunities to be more efficient and fiscally prudent. They have recommended a refunding, and based on the interest rates now, it is saving a good deal of money, and so we're grateful for that. And again, we're always looking to do that. So in connection with the refunding, we also have the chunk of money that was received as part of the Somerset parking deck, the reimbursement that was, again, as Mark alluded to, it was preordained back at the initial onset when the bonds were initially issued. So with that, there is $3,212,400, and that is the amount of money that was initially issued as tax exempt bonds. And so there are restrictions on this. It can only be used towards reducing the amount of the debt. And so City Council, in its resolution, based on the recommendation of City Administration, the refunding of the bonds will include a repayment of this $3,212,400. So that'll go directly to reduce the debt. Now, what that does is it provides to you, again, depending on what happens and the refunding we're hoping will happen next week. I'm sure Rob will touch on this a little bit, but what that does to you is it gives you an extra amount each year of income. So even though you're making this upfront investment towards reducing the bonds, or council is, and it's backed by the DDA revenue, it's going to generate $431,000 each year as an estimate. So that is additional money over and above the obligations of the debt. And with that, I think Rob has been working in doing this refunding that requires us to get a new rating. And I think Rob has been working very carefully and closely on that. And unless you have any other questions, I would turn it over to Rob.
Thanks, DDA. Just wanted to mention that the Standard & Poor's is going to give us our financial rating this week, and we're hoping that we stay with the AAA bond rating. And this funding that we're going to have is the interest rate projected was about all in was 1.78%, and that goes through 2034. So we didn't lengthen the bonds at all. We kept it the same length, but with that $3 million, we were able to, like Lori and Mark had said already, lower the risk to the city. So as we move forward, as Lori had mentioned, there's going to be cost savings of approximately $400,000 each year that the DDA will see, and then be able to do some, whatever you choose with the landscaping or whatever it may be. It'll be a great funding source going forward.
Rob, can you talk a little bit about the other funding that's going to go into the reserve that came in on this payment?
I'm sorry, Mark.
The dollars which are going to be in fund balance that came in from this payment, which is about what is it, like $750,000?
Oh, right. Yes. So we received over $4 million, but to pay down the bonds was 3.2. So there's going to be approximately $800,000 that will be added to the DDA's fund balance that really wasn't budgeted. Well, I mean, we budgeted $4 million, but we took 3.2 of it to pay down the debt. So what you'll see is an additional $800,000 for the DDA to spend again towards any project that you deem fit.
What will that bring the fund balance to?
That's going to bring the fund balance over $3 million.
And then we will also have the over $400,000 of additional new revenue per year.
Can you address covenant issues? I'm assuming we're going to improve our covenant position with the new bonds, right? Can you address that, and then address what's the regulation going to be you anticipate on the $3 million and the 400? And that's at closing you'll be at $3 million. So that means every year, if you did nothing, right, you'll be adding 400,000 more or less to the $3 million.
There won't be any covenant on that $400,000. That's exactly the point. That it'll be able to be spent.
Good. Great.
I would indicate, however, that you do want to have some reserves. We don't recommend that you spend everything. We want to make sure that we are conservative, but what will be required will be an amendment to the plan. And that is something that will have to go through some procedural measures. It has to ultimately be approved by the Troy City Council. And so again, the discussion for later on about what, are there plans for, for the money that remains for this landscaping, I think it's very important to have that discussion now. We will need to be amending the plans when there are residents that actually are in the district, because we have never accommodated for a residential council, and that is something that's required because we've never had residents in the district that would require that. So we will need to be doing an amendment of that. And so it's possible that we can do both of them at the same time. However, if the opportunity arises, we're going to, potentially do it earlier as well if we can. And again, we want to leverage as much of the money as we can to doing the projects that the DDA wants to do.
Chairman?
Yes.
This is Mark.
Okay.
And I have a new retirement board meeting, just so that you know, but we always can have a special meeting in the near future to actually explain this in greater detail and look at the financial options. But we wanted at least to get some general direction that you do want to do landscaping, and we can work a little bit more with MDOT. But we also can spend more time specifically on this issue if you want to schedule a special meeting.
Okay. So do you want to call that question now? You want us to get a reading from the board at this point, Mark? Or do you want to wait till?
No, I think right now would be a good place to do that. If they want, if the DDA wants to.
All right.
What
So,
we are
Hey,
looking
Howard,
Yes.
this is Marty.
Hi, Marty. Yeah.
Everybody hear me?
Yes.
Alan?
Yes. Yeah. Go
This is
ahead.
Marty Millenberg.
Yes. Go ahead.
I have a question, and I'm speakerphone here, so hopefully you can all hear me okay. So I guess just as a newer member to the board of 10 months now, and I don't know how many new members we have on the board, but you alluded in this bottom of page 1, Lori, your document, members to Downtown Development Authority, October 14th date, about Unicorp and the QDI. And so I've never heard of QDI. It's been mentioned a couple of times since I've been on the board. I've done some research on it on my own, and I got what I think is a pretty good handle. I guess what I'd like to, the question I have is 2 questions. One is, can I get the legal definition of QDI, number 1, from the city's perspective? And then number 2, I have a letter in front of me indicating that, and maybe this is outdated, but it goes back to 2016, and it says here that Unicorp wants, to be able to use the $4 million lump sum payment when the mall paid it off. So maybe you can walk me through that as well, for all of us, for that matter.
So I will give you just a very brief definition of the QDI. The QDI is actually an initiative that was passed by this board and was approved in a plan that was amended by City Council in 2017. And really, the purpose of it is to encourage parking structures and also stormwater detention, which those are we found that those are difficult to finance, and so it provides for an opportunity to apply any capture from a new development where a stormwater or where a parking structure is incorporated, to apply a portion of any increase in that taxable value towards repaying the developer for the costs of that. And that is an initiative. We've only had one person so far that has utilized this, and that was for the Unicorp parking structure. But there may be others as well. I know that there have been some requests for information.
Can you, Lori?
Aaron, I need to follow up on that just to make sure that we're clear. Yes, Unicorp requested the $4 million, but that did not happen. We have executed an agreement with Unicorp or other corporations related to Unicorp to utilize the QDI program, which basically allows for the developer to be able to get payments on a yearly basis, increased investment, which then increases the tax increment coming to it. So therefore, the QDI allows for them to capture 60% of that new revenue, and then the DDA gets 40%. So then every year we make payments to Unicor and the other corporations related to Unicor, related to the parking deck. And therefore, the DDA does not front any dollars. The developer just receives payments from revenue received from new development or new investment. And I just saw Nino Licari, our city assessor, go off, and he could probably explain that a little better, because he is the one that actually maintains how much development and how much building has occurred, so therefore how much new investment and how much the value goes up. And that's what go ahead, Chair.
But that capture at 60/40 is only to the revenue off of that project, correct?
Off the new construction, yes.
So it's not capturing any new revenues that the DDA creates or generates as a result of new development.
Correct. It's only the revenues generated from that specific property.
Well, the other thing in terms of, Marty, kind of where this goes, if I can, when we do reconvene on this issue, I think after post-closing would be good to have a good, rundown as to where is the DDA, right? Where are we? What covenants do we have? And so we really understand what, so to speak, is money that we can consider doing something with. Yeah. I mean,
no, thank you for that. Mark, I appreciate that explanation, because the document that I saw was August of 2016, and it seemed to me, based on what the October 14th document, that some changes had been made. And so I appreciate that clarity on that. And I just wanted to make sure that we weren't obligated to forfeit that money that came in. And so I'm glad that you cleared that up for me. So that was my only concern, and thank you for that.
Okay. Are there any? So, do you want some sort of guidance? Is there, right? This asked to call a question in terms of: is there an interest to explore the upgrading the interchange? Right. That's what you need to know at this time. Is that correct, Mark? Is that a good question? So, how does everybody feel? You want to give a yay, nay, up and down, and have Glenn do a call?
We don't really need an official resolution. We just trying to get a consensus that the DDA would like, in general, to utilize I'll call it the new revenues available to us to try to improve the landscaping in and eventually the corridor itself too.
Yeah. So I'm going to ask if there's anybody that objects to for us to consider. If you object, then let's hear you. If we don't, we'll consider that a nod, not commitments, but a nod to go further. No comments. Okay, Mark? So I think you're okay. You got support of the board to take a closer look at things.
Okay, will do. And just so that everyone knows, we may need a special meeting, and especially the timing may be quick with MDOT.
Okay. I don't hear anybody objecting, so. All right, thanks, Mark and Bill. So we'll move on. Are we done then with D in terms of Somerset? Other than that, we kind of understand that post-closing we'll get a better rundown of specifics of where exactly the DDA is, right? Funds available, covenants, commitments, what have you.
Right. What I anticipate when we have a special meeting and it's refunded, we'll actually have more specific numbers and estimates, and we would also then develop better recommendations on where to go and what to do.
I assume that. Yeah, good. Okay, great. So let's move on to E, which is the DDA marketing strategy. All right. And
thank you, Mr.
That's with Glenn. You're going to take that with Jamie, right?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. As everybody knows, our businesses have been hit really hard by the pandemic and also even prior to that with the construction of I-75. Business has diminished significantly in the area, as you can all tell. So the DDA has expressed an interest in the past to explore some marketing strategies going forward to help brand the area and to help market it for the future and market the businesses within the DDA. As a part of that, I've been working with board member Kenny Koza, Chair Tom Kusak, who's also from the Troy Chamber of Commerce, and city staff, Cindy Stewart, Community Affairs Director, to explore some ideas, explore some options in terms of how to go forward next and to come back to the DDA with some ideas and thoughts to get your reaction as to how to proceed with marketing. So as a part of that, Kenny Koza suggested that we speak to a Troy-based firm, SMZ Marketing, to get some ideas, to stimulate some ideas as to how to go forward. What kind of possibilities are out there in terms of marketing the DDA going forward, knowing that we're in the midst of a pandemic and that we still have several months to go yet on construction for I-75. So what we asked SMZ to do is to come up with some professional-based ideas as to how to move forward. It's kind of like a broad-range menu, per se, of ideas, and to get some feedback from the DDA. And there was a memo that went out with this as well, just to see how you want to proceed and to get some ideas stimulated. So with that, what I'd like to do is kind of turn this over to Jamie Michelson. And Mark?
Just before you do that, and I'm sorry for interrupting, I just wanted to inform the DDA that your DDA plan does allow for marketing in the plan currently, and we allocate, and this is off the top of my head, I think $25,000 a year, Glenn, for this. And we have not really spent any money yet on this, and we budgeted it over at least 2 years.
We thought this would be a good way to stimulate some ideas, so I asked Jamie to kind of run through pretty quickly some ideas via PowerPoint. Our IT staff, Dave Mihalik, who is on the line, has control of that PowerPoint. And Jamie, when you're ready to turn the page, you can just let Dave know and he will do that. So Dave is setting that up right now. And go ahead, Jamie.
Yeah. Good morning, DDA board and officials. Glenn, you nailed that. Thank you. I'm Jamie Michelson. With me is Stefan Timblin, who's an executive creative director at Simons Michelson Zeev Advertising, or SMZ. And yeah, we are a proud Troy-based business going back to 1977. And early in this year, pre-COVID, we sat down and we're kicking around ideas that were based on a lot of what you're talking about early in this meeting, road construction and traffic and those issues that we're facing people who live, work, and play in Troy. And now we shift to a different time. So I'm going to let Stefan just sort of rip through these different ideas that we have, and then we'll get your action afterwards. So,
great, thanks, Jamie.
Yeah.
Glenn, can I get a time check? When you say rip through this, give me an idea of how fast, because I can pace it accordingly. I think you're on mute still, Glenn. Sorry.
5 to 10 minutes.
Okay, 5 to 10 minutes. I can do that. So I'm sorry. Who is the IT guy? Dave, is it?
Yes, it is.
All right, coach. So go ahead, Dave. Skip ahead, and I'll just say the word skip. We can skip. We're going to go through this pretty quickly. I think you guys will get an idea. But the biggest takeaway right now is we're not saying to launch this tomorrow, guys. Right? As Glenn said, we're still in the unknown period. But we do know that there is going to be the sun will rise, right? We're going to come out of this. Things might look different, but there's a built-up optimism and desire for people to get back out there. I know I can't wait to get back to our Troy office and head out to eat, to shop, and to do all those things. I wish it was right now. So what we're going to present to you is something that, the time frame is more of a next year, spring, a summer, something like that. And what we were tasked with at the beginning was really more about construction and how can we get people to really, it was a simple brief. How do we get people to eat out more at lunch? Because that wasn't happening as much as we wanted it to. So that's where this idea lives. I think you can see that through this idea, or through this sort of approach, we can expand it out to other things. But the brief for this was very laser focused on all these incredible restaurants up and down the Big Beaver corridor. How do we get people to take part in that more? So we could skip. We could skip. I just said that. I'm going to go through this real fast for you guys. Obviously, our audiences, we know our audience, right? Restaurant owners, the Detroit community, active workers, cautious area workers. We have some different audiences we want to attract. Residents as well, of course. That's the community to take part. So we could skip. At the core of a lot of this is something that we've seen already trying to take a hold, and that is how can we inspire people to get out and go for a walk, right? That I don't know about you guys. I just already took my first walk of the day. I think I'm up to like 6 now just to stay sane. But that's a behavioral change that we're hoping sticks, right? That people are going to want to get out, go for a walk, be outside. And we think that could be part of the overall plan with Troy. And we see that with the way buildings are being built now, more closer to Big Beaver, trying to make it feel like more walkable. And there's a snowball effect, right? The more people you see out, the more you want to be out. Let's continue to go off that. So jump forward again. So skip again. Let's go out for some big ideas. So we're all in this together, and let's build off the power of community. Let's celebrate the Feast of Choices. Now, of course, we don't know what the final number is going to be. It's not going to be maybe as optimistic as it once was, but we do know that regardless of when we come out of this, there's going to be a ton of options, more lunch choices than arguably maybe anywhere in the region, right? And so let's use that to our advantage. So we'd like to propose, if we skip to the next slide, the idea of the Troy Lunch Club, right? And that would be a sort of a grassroots feeling vibe of getting all of this disparate restaurants and options together under this one umbrella of the Troy Lunch Club. It sort of it's a great way to brand this area, to focus on one of the strengths of the area, which right now we all know about, but it's sort of disparate. It doesn't live in one place. And let's show you how this could come together in a lot of different ways. And as Glenn said, it is kind of a menu. Not all of these things need to happen, right? And not all of these things need to happen at once. We could pick and choose a few of these, but the idea would be to roll out this Troy Lunch Club with a series of activations and executions that really make it a tangible, real thing. So we could skip to the next slide. We could skip as well. Thank you very much. We can skip as well. So these are ideas that get people out, right? So what we like to do when we do a new sort of initiative, a new idea, is try to kick it off with a bang. You want to get some media, you want to get some buzz, you want to get people to pay attention to it. So we love this idea of a foodie 5K. It's not literally a 5K run. What it is if you go from Ocean Prime down to Grand Castor, that's literally a 5K, that distance. It's 3.1 miles. And we would love to open this, in early summer or late spring, early summer of next year when people are feeling ambitious, they want to be out with a 5K stretch. It's sort of a food festival, if you will, that would take place all up and down that 5K distance, a linear food festival. And we think this works on several angles. There's still probably going to be some reticence of getting everybody in one big crowd. So instead of picking one location to do this food festival, let's stretch it across. And we would invite all of our restaurants and participants to sort of open up outside a little bit, have a little outdoor table. We can line the sidewalks of Big Beaver, and you'd get a crowd of people coming up and down that would still be somewhat socially distanced, right? So people could feel comfortable, but it'd be out and about. And most importantly, you're getting this idea of the Troy Lunch Club out into the world. Skip to the next slide. In addition to that, we love this idea of a TLC, Troy Lunch Club. passport, right? We could print little booklets that have all of the restaurants in there. And you could get a stamp for visiting every restaurant, or a clip, or somehow to check that off. If you go to 15 restaurants, for example, maybe you get a free lunch. If you go to all of the restaurants, maybe a free dinner. If anyone's been to Grand Rapids recently, they have a similar thing for all their breweries that works really well. You get a stamp at each brewery, and if you get a certain amount, you get a mug, you get a T-shirt, things like that. And again, this works on that sense of completion that people have, right? They feel like, oh gosh, I got to go to all these things. I got to try these out. So a nice way to drive repeat visits across the board. We could, of course, have an app there that also could randomize. There's a lot of apps out there. This would be really easy. Well, I don't know where I want to go today. Hit spin, goes through all the options, and it pulls one up. We can go to the next slide. This is an idea we love for maps, and we can help work with you guys to build that would be location specific, right? So we could pick out a few of the biggest offices and most dense areas along the Troy corridor, and create these walking maps that show not only the distance to restaurants from where you're at. So for SMC on Kurtz Boulevard, it's 0.3 miles to this restaurant, 0.6 miles to this one, 1.2 miles to this one, but also give estimated caloric burn to go to that restaurant and back. And then we could even equate that to what kind of meal that would be. You can walk up to, the Poke Bowl and have half a Poke Bowl, and you'll work that off on your walk, right? So just have some fun with it as well. Skip. Thank you. These bikes are familiar. You guys know these. You see them everywhere. The Mogos. Every city has these. But what if we could have a fleet that were just inspired for lunchtime, right? To get people to get out and about. Again, we want to drive people to walk, but we could also get them to bike. You can see that brandy right on the front. And this is sort of a moving billboard as well. But I know at our office, if we could have access to 3 or 4 of these bikes, we'd have lines of people to jump on these to go. And that also gets you out of your maybe smaller circle into that larger concentric circle. You're on a bike, now maybe you go 1.5 miles away or 3/4 mile, whatever it is. But a nice simple solution to get that name out there. We can continue. The next slide. Uber, Lyft, huge opportunity here. We can offer free Uber, Lyft lunch hours where limited amount of cars. You could almost basically imagine it as an Uber or Lyft that you own. And for a couple hours, they could just be shuttling people around the Troy area with the rule, of course, that they pick you up in Troy and they drop you off in Troy. They're not taking you out anywhere else, but it's a free ride. And you have no excuse not to go try something. Skip. Sorry guys, I'm blasting through this, but I know our time is limited. Again, a lot of this is just to get this idea out into the world, get this Troy Lunch Club thought out there. Let's be honest. One of the issues we have is Big Beaver is a really busy road. That's both a positive and a negative. So sometimes crossing Big Beaver can be quite the game of Frogger, quite the adventure. So what if we had these lunchtime crossing guards that had the ability to stop traffic, slow it down at certain points. They could also hand out information on the Troy Lunch Club, give you that passport, answer questions. Hey, where should I eat? They're basically ambassadors, if you will, street team, getting this idea out there into the world. If we go to the next slide, advertising, of course, that's what we do. So you want to get the word out. We could have billboards going up and down. You'll see at the end here, we have sandwich boards with a lot of fun lines on there, but continue to get the word out. This, of course, can be connected to things like Restaurant Week that are already existing to drive further equity and connection. All right, next slide. So we love this, right? So a lot of the stuff that we've shown so far is more tangible. It's out in the world. Once this is up and running, you want to start to get free media out of this. So we would love to do a lunch club that, imagine you follow the Troy Lunch Club on Instagram or Facebook. Every day we would drop what we call the 11 a.m. special. So at 9 o'clock, we would drop this out there. We'd work with all different restaurants. So each day there'd be a unique special that you can only get by following us on social media. So here's an example of, buy one, get a half off of a poke bowl. Obviously, we like poke at SMZ. But a great way to continue to get that word out. And as you guys all know, if you work and live in Troy, you give me a great idea, I'll take it. Come to me with an option. I'll be much more likely to take part in it. And it's a real valuable reason. I'm not going to follow the Troy Lunch Club on social unless there's something in it for me. Here's something that's in it for me. I'm going to be getting a daily special that's unique that I can go into that or cafe or restaurant, show them that, and get this unique deal. And again, every day I'm getting reminded, Troy's got this great lunch options. Troy got this great lunch options every single day. That could also be a text, could be an email. There's so many ways to get that word out. Okay, next slide. So I'm gonna, Glenn, everybody has access to this deck, I believe. Is that right?
Oh, you know what? I'm sorry. That might be easier.
No, this is kind of what they have right now.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, so we'll go through these pretty quickly, but again, we could do this all day long. If you want to just skip through each slide, give each slide 2 seconds, I think you get the idea. Welcome to Lunchland. 99 Reasons to Lunch Out and Counting. Lando Lunch. Friends Treat Friends to Lunch. That's the law in Lunchland. We make it, you eat it. The Great Circle of Lunch. Got 99 problems, but lunch ain't one. So again, part of this is we are anticipating a sort of optimistic spirit out there, right? When things get back to normal, whatever normal is. And so we don't need to be apologetic. We can be celebratory as we get back out into the world. This last section is, if you won't come to us, we're going to come to you, right? So how do we get employees to get takeout? There's still going to be a subsection of people that maybe are not comfortable going to a restaurant, even for takeout. So let's bring it to them. So we go to skip to the next slide. We love this idea of again, it's similar to that daily lunch special post, but can we work with local restaurants to offer a $5 entree? This obviously has to be on scale, right? You can't just sell one of these. You'd have to sell a lot of them. But they could work on a $5 lunch that could be delivered to SMZ. There'd be 40 takers there. You go to Kelly Services. How many takers are there? You go to 888 Big Beaver, all the buildings, right? So some kind of a packaged $5 brown bag lunch special with a minimum order there. On the next slide, similar to what was this? Okay, so this is just more advertising. Advertising the meals to go. Honestly, I don't really remember this idea. Let's skip to the next slide. A lot of stuff in here.
It's kind of pressed for time, are we not, Mark? Excuse me. Are we trying to finish by 11:30?
No, I mean, we can go a little bit longer. Finish by 11:45 to give me time for my new meeting.
Okay, I got 2 more slides, guys. I'll just jump through these fast. Let's create outdoor eating spaces around the corridor to make people feel comfortable. We go to the next slide. Again, really going on the social media. We'll go to the next slide. We could share out a version of this deck. Similar to our Uber Lyft idea, we can subsidize some DoorDash days, so you don't have to pay the DoorDash delivery fee on certain days to try out these new restaurants. And then our next slide would be, again, a reusable bag, a lunch tote, if you will, to get this word out. So it's all about branding this idea and collecting this consortium, this group of restaurants that want to be part of the lunch club. And it's sort of we believe if you build it, they will come. So blasted through that, guys. I appreciate you guys sitting through that. But if anybody would like to hear it in real time without me micro machine speed reading it, we'd be happy to do it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I can just from a schedule standpoint here. I assume there's going to be some discussion for a minute, and if so, maybe I'm suggesting that we drop the planning and development update, so we have just 5 minutes. How's the board feel?
Sounds good.
Okay. So we'll, all right, so we'll drop from the agenda, Lori, Mark, Glenn, right? The development, the materials in there, we can read it or should read it. Thank you so much for preparing, Glenn. And keep bringing in business. So let's open up the floor. Does anybody have any questions or comments about what they see here?
Any idea on the timing of what he's proposing? Is it this calendar year or next?
I think we're talking after COVID kind of eases up. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, we would put this later, next year, but a stitch in time. You'd have to start working on something like this a bit early to get it ready, and then you could kind of hold it, and launch when the time is right.
Yeah. So I have a few thoughts and questions. I think I'd like to suggest we consider that when we have this next interim meeting is post bond closing, and when we look at where we are, maybe we put on the agenda. I don't want to create a big agenda because the other one's going to be a real important focus. But they talked about the $25,000, and where do we stand with that? And maybe everybody's fine with it, but it sure doesn't seem appropriate, adequate to me. So, but I'd like to at least call the question at a later date, if that's okay. All right. I mean, and Mark, are you okay with that, Mayor?
Yes, yes. And Chair Kurlik, I think as part of that, if we're getting the general nod that this is a good direction, Glenn and I and our staff, we can develop a more formal proposal to move forward.
Okay.
And also a recommendation for expenditures of DDA dollars. And we'd have to really formally develop an agreement with this firm to move forward.
Okay, so if I can make a few comments here. I mean, it's certainly very creative and very interesting, and could offer some lifestyle on the corridor. I have a couple of questions in that. Number one, we've tried the shuttle bus to enhance the restaurateur's activity, and not to be answered today, but what did that tell us? If you take a campaign like this, what did we learn from the bus effort, right? If it tells us anything. The other thing that albeit this is a fine presentation and it's great for the restaurants, but I just want to remind everybody that the Troy corridor is more or less at a 20 to 24% vacancy in office. And if you go to Birmingham or you go to Bloomfield, I believe it's less than 10 or less % vacant. Not only that, but they get higher rent. So when we do this kind of an effort, I have to ask everybody, should we really be addressing a PR campaign? The restaurants are critical. It's an important part of the people that work here to have viable restaurants that they associate and enjoy. But where's the solution for? We are almost passing Southfield for the highest vacancies in Oakland County consistently. And so what do we do about that, or don't you care about that on the corridor?
This is Larry Kiesling. I appreciate SMZ's efforts on this, and unified marketing is important. My concern is that we don't end up cluttering the corridor with signage. that's competing with one another. That everything should be cooperative among the businesses that are tied to the DDA.
Yeah. Okay, Larry, that's a good point. Thank you. Mayor Barker was waiting to speak. Go, Mayor.
Yeah, no, I think what I hear you saying, Chair, is that you're wondering if although we value the restaurant industry, it's a huge part of what the corridor is. Are you thinking maybe we need to look at something as a bigger PR marketing plan overall for the whole community or the whole corridor and not just focus on one sector? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. I thought that's what you're saying. I mean, and I obviously that would then need to be addressed with the funds that are allocated or the amount that's allowable under the plan and everything. And that is, I agree with you in that respect. I don't know statistically on what studies show and how effective the PR campaigns are to bring tenants into buildings is. Obviously, I would want to look at some of that data and see if it makes sense to put money into doing something like that. But I'm not opposed to that idea myself. I think that obviously we want to stay competitive, and if it can be done in an economically efficient way, but with some actual punch behind it, I think it's a good thing for all of us, including the restaurants, obviously. But more people down in the corridor are going to bring more people to the restaurants. But to SMZ, I do love the creativity of what you have, and I think it's a great idea, and I think it definitely can fit into what Troy is looking to become as the population changes a little bit and the demographics, and to really focus on the fitness aspect and also just the fun kind of club atmosphere type of it. And I think people are really drawn to that. So I commend you for that. I think it was great.
Yeah, appreciate that.
I think that, this is Dan McLeish, I think if the offices and the buildings are full, the restaurants really will not have to worry about getting their business back. The problem is when you lose tenants on the corridor, the restaurants are going to be losing people to come in at lunchtime, at dinner time, breakfast, whatever. So I think you really need to concentrate on what is the issue, why the corridor is losing tenants.
Yeah, I mean, not that we're talking about solutions. One of the things that I've thought about is a little bit of a focused study. For example, the real estate brokers in the market in businesses, and I know that we lose people who move to Detroit. And you hear nothing but good stories coming out of Detroit, and no disrespect for Detroit, but that's my point. Where are our good stories? Where are our good stories so that employers and employees say because it has an effect. Employees say, hey, why aren't we on Big Beaver? And so it's a big question, and it's just puzzling to me that we're in such poor shape. And consistently, we've been there for some time. So,
Mr. Chairman, just one thing from a different viewpoint, devil's advocate here. I liked the take on it, approaching it as let's help the restaurants and the businesses on the corridor, because there's one really big uncertainty right now, and that's how office space is going to be affected after the pandemic. How much office space is going to be occupied. So that's going to be an issue that we're still going to have to wait and see. But what I think we're also posed with as a problem is that we don't want the vacancy rate of restaurants to all of a sudden flip upside down too, as they lose business and they go under. So promoting their business to keep them afloat, especially when we do come back to some norm, I think a hard push to help them however we could on the corridor would be beneficial.
Well, I think it's really true. We do want to support these restaurants, and that doesn't. I'm not suggesting that we put in the bucket the restaurant strategy here. It's just that, Brian, our corridor has historically for years now been just running almost second highest vacancies in Southeast Michigan. So there are other issues here. It's not just that the restaurants, we've had restaurants in pre-COVID, right? The restaurants were rocking and rolling. The economy was rocking and rolling, and we still had 18% or 20% vacancies. So why? what do we need to do about it?
This is Marty Nolan speaking. I appreciate the concern there. Obviously, I'm concerned as a restaurant owner that if we don't have supporting businesses supporting us, it will affect us and has affected us. I do think restaurants have created sort of this vibe within the community as a place to go, not just from Oakland County residents, but from our adjacent counties as well, because people do look at Big Beaver Road as a place for hospitality and eat. And I guess, Alan, to your point, you say, it's a 20% vacancy rate. Are you throwing in Somerset, the old Kmart headquarters? Is that part of that mix? And also the building adjacent to my restaurant, that's pretty empty as well.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering if those two spots are what you're referring to, because they're really driving up the vacancy rate. But as a whole, is the strip, are they pretty well occupied or not? I guess that's my question.
Well, I do not believe, Marty, that Kmart is in that equation. My knowledge is not in that equation. Yeah, but
yeah.
Those of us that have office buildings, we have a very hard time attracting people. They go to Birmingham and Bloomfield, and they're paying a lot more money in Birmingham, and they have parking issues and they have challenges there, but it's a lifestyle, So it's a broader equation here that there's how it is. You have a fever, there's something wrong here. And I'm not saying that I have the answers. I'm just suggesting that I think we need to be considering, as the mayor pointed out, is that we got to kind of think this through. What's going on? What's the problem? And then what are the causes, and how do we deal with it?
Yeah, it's a concern. I mean, I certainly don't want less vacancies on Big Beaver Road, because it affects not just you guys, but it affects us as well, and a number of other establishments on the strip as well. So I don't have the answer there either. I'm not an office building expert, so I don't know what it is that tenants are looking for. It seems to me in some respect they're looking for, some hospitality options. I mean, Birmingham has that walkability feature, although Birmingham's been a mess for 6 months now. So I know people over there are struggling, but I wish I had the answer for you there, Alan, but I think that's a good point that you're making, that you ought to figure out why the vacancy rates are high and what needs to be done.
And given the timeline here, I don't know where we go today. I mean, we can't solve this, but I think it's part of this marketing that SMZ's put together, and it's all good. And my suggestion may be that the staff needs to take a little broader approach to it. Maybe sit down with Mayor Barker and see what he thinks, or get a few other people together and just see, kind of get a little sidebar task force going, because it's a problem. And people are to make deals. I'm sorry?
Need to have the Chamber of Commerce involved as well.
Yeah, agree.
Yes, and sorry, this is Tara. I had a call in. Unfortunately, I had a meeting I had to get to by noon. We are all working on these things, and with COVID being the way it is right now, we are going to see an influx of tenants in these larger office complexes not coming back. They're reestablishing the factor of this new work from home environment. Now, that doesn't change the outcome of either question that's on the table currently. But what I will say is that we do have to start looking from a hospitality model how we're going to help some of these businesses in the interim. Because as of now, we're seeing massive amount of struggles. We're not seeing the transient business coming into Troy. So how can we also look at ourselves as a destination to help out these hospitality partners?
Yeah. So unfortunately, we're really out of time, Mark. We've run over, so where do we go from here, Mark? Go ahead, Mark.
Well, I think that two things. One, I think I hear you, and I actually agree with it. It's a greater issue with office vacancies. So I think we'll regroup and look at what we can do, and maybe, I think the important thing is if the DDA believes that we need professional assistance, we get that input and we develop a more specific plan. I also want to take the opportunity to get into the office market situation, because this is a long historical problem going back when Kmart was open, because they used to service it. And also it goes back to, the American automakers' reduction of the market share historically, so it's a long process. So we can come back with reporting related to vacancies, office vacancies, and also a more direct proposal for marketing services to be more comprehensive. If that's, you would agree with that.
So if everybody's okay with that, I think that's a good recommendation that you and the team start getting your head around it. And we'll bring it up with the board next meeting, what have you. So if that's okay, I'd like to remind everybody of the schedule for 2021. You have it on your package, the January 20th, April 21st, and October 20th in 2021.
Actually, Mr. Chair, if it's possible, I'd like to have a resolution that actually sets those as the dates for the DDA meetings. That's January 20th, April 21st, and October 20th of 2021.
Yes, can I have a motion to adopt? Dan, thank you. Okay, Dan, I've made the motion. Is there a discussion? Any problems? Can I have a second, please?
Second, Ward Randall.
Okay. Glenn, would you do the roll, please, on the issue? Call.
Yes, Chair Alan Carlick.
Yes.
Tim Blair.
Yes.
I think he just dropped off. Okay, thank you. Mayor Baker.
No, I'm dropping off right now. I apologize, but I can vote yes.
All right. And yes for me.
Mayor Baker.
Yes.
Thank you. Cheryl Bush.
Yes.
Larry Kiesling.
Yes.
Marty Nolenberg.
Yes.
Dan McLeish. Dan.
He's muted. He said yes.
Okay. Brian Majewski.
Yes.
Ward Randall.
Yes.
Bernie Reschke.
Yes.
Tara Thompson Cusack.
Yes.
Kenny Koza. Kenny.
Yes.
Doug Schroeder.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay. I want to thank everybody, and we certainly don't want to take our eye off the ball for the restaurant efforts. Lori, did you have a comment?
Yes, we do have to ask if there is any public comment, and that is necessary for this meeting.
Yes. Is there any public comment?
There was no public comment submitted.
Okay. Okay, great. So with that, thank you, everybody. Thank you for staying over. And with that, we'll adjourn. Oh, yes, sir. Oh, saying goodbye?
Thank you for
Just say goodbye. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Thank you all.